in the national championship game because what Houston did to Duke on Saturday night, which I was out of my mind, and we will get to. I'm still out of my mind about it. I don't believe it. To Florida doing literally the exact same thing that Houston down the stretch and winning the national championship because Clayton was the best player on that court Monday night when it mattered the most.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for Richard in the first half, Florida's not in that game.
Well, that was a defensive game. It was right in the hands of Houston. Like, what was it, 25-20 at one point near the end of halftime?
Yeah.
And then Houston goes on that run. They go up 12, and then they just flat out folded.
Yeah. Walter Clayton did not have a great game in the first half.
Wow.
But he turned it on.
He scored 0.
Yeah. The leading scorer actually for the Gators in that game was Will Richard with 18. So he was the one who really kept them in it. And man, just look at what Florida did throughout their run. They had to come back against the two-time defending champion UConn Huskies in the second round. They came back against Texas Tech. They had to come back against the number 1 overall seed and fellow SEC mate Auburn in the
and
final.
That was a flat-out choke job, in my opinion, by Auburn.
And they had to come back against Houston in the national championship.
And what's crazy is, even though we had a Final Four of all number 1 seeds going into the tournament, I personally thought the 1 seed that was the least likely to get to the Final Four was Florida.
And yet, here they are, sitting atop college football's highest summit.
I'm sorry, college basketball. But you know what's funny?
I mean,
for everybody like yourself, Josh, that said, "Oh, this tournament's boring. We didn't."
Yeah, I was wrong.
Cinderellas. Yeah, how about that Final Four? Those were maybe 2 of the best college basketball games in like the last half decade.
And I think you're going to start seeing more of this. Maybe not necessarily like all of these close games and all that, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot less Cinderella runs from your Akrons or your St. Peters or your Oaklands, because you're going to start seeing these guys at mid-majors go into the transfer portal and end up at schools like Florida, Tennessee, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, like these powerhouse, the premier.
Yeah, it's going to turn into what college football basically is now, which I to be honest with you, I don't mind it. I think that the more talent we have in this tournament, the better watch it is. I got to give Florida a lot of credit because, like I said, at times in every game, like you said, Josh, they looked like that they were going to fall behind, and they just kept battling. And Walter Clayton, even though he didn't have a good game in the first half in the national championship game, when it mattered the most, and especially in the second half against Auburn, I mean, he flat out beat Auburn by himself in the second half practically. Just what an amazing player on that stage. I believe he had like the best Final Four game by any college basketball player in years, maybe ever, in terms of points scored, 34 points. Absolutely incredible.
We'll get to Cooper Flagg in a minute.
Oh my God. Oh, I that brought back memories for me of the Denver Nuggets last year at halftime of 20 against the T-Wolves. And remember when I came out here on Tuesday and said, this is how the game went for me. I got it. I got this. Maybe I don't got it. I really don't got this.
But
no, that's exactly what happened on Saturday night, because that was the worst loss for a team that I was indirectly rooting for without a rooting interest in my life.
So the reason I brought up Cooper Flagg, he's undoubtedly going to be the number 1 pick, but I think based on his performance throughout this tournament and in the Final Four, And of course, in the national championship, Walter Clayton said, hey, I need to be a top, not just a top 5 pick, top 3. I'll take it even a step further. He should be the number 2 pick in the draft.
Boy, I don't know about that. I think he's going to be a very good NBA player. I don't know about transcendent NBA player the way Cooper Flagg is. But let me talk about Cooper Flagg because I don't care if he was 18 years old. I don't care. This Duke team melted down when it mattered the most. And I know Houston played good defense, and I give them credit for it. But good defense does not stop you from not making a field goal the last 10 minutes of a basketball game. That was a total and utter choke job. Duke was up 14 points with 8 minutes to go. They were up 9 points with 2 minutes to go. They were up 6 points in college basketball with 30 seconds to go in the game. And they lost the game. This loss is on John Shire. It's on Cooper Flagg. It's on all the players. It's on all the coaches. But even with that, Josh, the score was 67-66. About 20 seconds left. Houston had just taken the lead. Duke had a chance to win the game and to still keep my bet of Duke winning the national championship alive. And Cooper Flagg got the ball. He went into the lane. He did a turnaround jump shot, and he barely grazed the rim. I don't care if the man is 18 years old and still should be a freaking senior in high school, for God's sakes. What we learned on Saturday night was, at least at this point in his young career, Cooper Flagg, as great as you are and as great as you probably will be in the NBA, does not yet have the clutch gene, because that was the shot to win the game, and Cooper Flagg flat out choked.
So, based on what you're saying, I think your answer to the question on the screen is yes, he should return to Duke.
I am going to answer this the smart way, because what Cooper Flagg should do in this world of NIL and transfer portal and all of the mess that we know in college sports, he should use his leverage with both Duke and the terrible ass teams that are going to be drafting in the NBA draft lottery and say, fellas, I'm not making my decision until I find out who gets the number 1 pick. Drive up that price. Make Duke pay you even more money to potentially go back to Duke, or see what NBA team would be willing to, if you're in a situation where you don't want to go to this franchise, see what an NBA team would be willing to give up to get the number 1 pick. Because if I am Cooper Flagg, if Miami gets the number 1 pick, I'm going to the NBA. If Chicago gets the number 1 pick and they don't make the playoffs, I'm going to the NBA. If Philadelphia or San Antonio get the number 1 pick, I'm going to the NBA. But if the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, the Sacramento Kings, if these terrible franchises that have been terrible for years and barely even know basketball exists take the number 1 pick, there is no way in hell I am going to one of those franchises, and I will return to Duke for a sophomore season.
I will say, if he goes to the Utah Jazz, that would be interesting with him.
Oh, no, I disagree. That's another place I'm not going. I'm not going to Utah.
That would be an interesting pairing with him and Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, he would be the only guy there with unattractive free agents. Markkanen's a nice player. There's no chance in the Western Conference that team has a chance to win a championship. The only team in the West that excites me for him is San Antonio. Because I get Wemby. I get De'Aaron Fox. Hopefully they get a new coach sometime and the old man don't ruin them down there in San Antonio and Greg Popovich, who just need to stay away from that team forever at this point. That's the only team in the West that I'm excited about for him going. Because the West, as we just talked about when it comes to the playoffs, it's a freaking gauntlet. I mean, imagine him in the same conference with SGA, Jokic, LeBron, Luka, Kawhi, Ja, Houston's guys, Ahmed Thompson, Jalen Green, Sengun. We're in the East. It's like, I got to go through Josh Unger's guy, Jason Tatum. I
Yeah.
got to go through Donovan Mitchell. And Giannis don't really scare me because the Bucks stink. I think Cooper Flagg could get into the playoffs, maybe even the second round if the cards fall right in the East in his rookie season. Or in the
Yeah.
West, he might win 18 games.
Yeah, true. It's more than likely it's going to be somebody like Washington or Charlotte or a Utah that ends up with the number one pick because those teams were terrible.
I think Chicago, like I said, if I was them, I would do everything in my power to lose the play-in tournament games. I would not waste my time, and I would try to get lucky with a ping pong ball. And
yeah, Chicago. Because if Chicago gets in the playoffs, we would smoke them. That wouldn't even be.
I think Cooper Flagg. Now you can make an argument. Oh, he'd be in the shadow of Michael Jordan. Jordan hasn't played there in over 20 years. The Bulls have stunk for the past decade ever since Derrick Rose got hurt.
Derrick. Okay, I got to. You brought him up, so I'm going to go off on this. Derrick Rose has got to be one of, if not the biggest what ifs in the NBA. Because when they drafted him number one overall, you saw the instant impact Derrick Rose had with the Chicago Bulls.
Until LeBron made him his daddy. Until LeBron made him his daddy when he was with Miami.
Yes, but you saw what Derrick Rose was doing with the Bulls. He won Rookie of the Year. He won MVP.
Until they got smoked by Miami.
Yes.
Again, correct. I will reiterate.
Yes, that part is true. But, like, a lot of people were saying that he was the most athletic point guard the NBA had ever seen until he got injured.
But does athletic win championships? Derrick Rose, John Morant, Russell Westbrook. Does that win you a championship? I would argue no.
Okay. And I think that's part of the reason why Durant left Oklahoma City.
That is the exact reason why Durant left Oklahoma City.
But it's just, I have to say, that's one of the biggest what ifs. The other big what if, when it comes to specifically the Eastern Conference, what if Joel Embiid would have stayed healthy and never gotten injured?
That's the bigger what if to me.
Really?
Because I thought Philly had a legit case for years to call themselves at least the second best team in the East, if not the best. And the even more what if is, what if Ben Simmons would have actually learned how to shoot?
Yeah.
That Philly team with Embiid and Simmons, I don't care what anybody says, the 2019 team with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, and Tobias Harris, if Kawhi Leonard does not go ring around the rosy, JJ Redick as well, if Kawhi Leonard does not make maybe the greatest clutch shot in the history of the NBA, I predict the Philadelphia 76ers that year would have won the title. I will say it forever. I thought that team was destined and that was their best shot. And after that, everything has gone downhill. And I think Cooper Flagg would have a chance to right that Philadelphia wrong. Because if you get Cooper Flagg, you can move off, in my opinion, Paul George. You can move off Embiid. You can move forward with him and Maxey and whatever you would get for those two other players and start your rebuild back to the top. And as we mentioned, outside of Cleveland and Boston, the Knicks don't scare you. Milwaukee, in my opinion, is on the downhill. As good as Indiana is, you like Tyrese Halliburton more than I do, but I don't think he's in this all-world top 5 player in the league. So I think that Cooper Flagg in Philadelphia could be really interesting like that.
I agree with you. he would definitely have the easiest path if he were to go to the Eastern Conference, but not if he goes to the Hornets or the Wizards. Hell no.
The crazy one would be, and again, I said they have no chance. If they somehow make the playoffs, I'll fall on the floor. What if he ended up in Dallas?
Oh God. Oh Lord.
Would that, if he turns out, again, hypothetical, if he wins you a championship, I think you would say, okay, the Luka trade was worth it.
God. That's I don't even know what to say to that.
Him and AD, by the way, could compete in the West. I didn't think about that, but you know what? That in the West, that works.
So, how about this one? It's unlikely to happen because they have Ant, but what if somehow Minnesota misses the playoffs?
Well, aren't they locked in? Well, I guess they could lose both the 7, 8, and 9, 10 and miss it, I guess, theoretically, right?
Yeah, because they have a huge game tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies after blowing a 24-point lead against the Milwaukee Bucks.
To answer your question, it's very unlikely. I would love to see it happen. I still don't know if that team is for the next few years a perennial championship contender because I think they're very Ant dependent, but Cooper Flagg would be a big difference maker.
As of right now, Minnesota is 8th in the West.
So they would play Oklahoma City, which I would take Oklahoma City in that series, probably in 5 or 6, to be honest with you. Yeah, the West is going to be interesting.